Those of you who work as language translators or interpreters, what is the most awkward, uncomfortable conversation that you have had to convey? I live in Latvia, Eastern Europe. I was a guide/interpreter for a hockey team from Canada/us. Now, one of the guys decides that he needs his skates sharpened, so we look around the arena we are in, and we find the sharpening station, a small room with an old Russian granddad in it. So he gives him the skates, the old guy gets to work. When he gets them back, he looks them over and goes WTF, what was the guy even doing? So now he insists that he will use the station himself. This hurts the old Russian and he just plain refuses to allow it. So he offers money to the old Rusky 100 local currency 200. That would be 1/3 of the guy's monthly salary. Now, here comes the problem for me as an interpreter. There is no way to explain to the old Russian guy, yes, this guy is a millionaire. Yes, he doesn't think this is big money. Yes, that for just using the machine for 10 minutes. Honestly, impossible. I know the words and how to arrange them, but in no way I can do it so that the guy understands. So I got a pissed hockey dude waving his skates around one side and an old Rusky telling him to go sit on a dick. Not paraphrasing here. I couldn't piss anyone off, so, like a masterful pilot, I continuously switched from English. Yeah, he is an old Russian fart that knows no better. Fuck him. Let's find a professional to Russian. Yeah, fucking Americans think they always know better. With these words I urged the skate guy out the room and left the old Rusky goblin to his own secrets and devices. Conflict averted. Sure, I did stop interpreting during their negotiations about who has fucked whose mother, but I don't think they would have reached a consensus anyway. I was interpreting for a high school teacher who was participating in an event to try to get dropouts to come back to HS in a majority Hispanic neighborhood. Anyway, the school gave us a list with addresses that we had to go to try to persuade the kids/parents. We go to this one house and ring the bell. The mother answers. I start translating what the teacher was saying, and we go back and forth with the mother, asking her to see the kid. Let's call her Mariah. The mom kept insisting we couldn't talk to Mariah and the teacher kept giving the whole spiel about dropping out and to think of the future, etc. About 10 minutes into the conversation, the frustrated teacher wants me to ask the mother why on earth couldn't we talk to Mariah, to which the mother breaks down crying and says that she died a week before from a long illness. That's why she had dropped out. Ensues the worst and most awkward maybe 5 minutes of our lives, between apologies and condolences. Needless to say, we didn't go to any other house that day. BTW, the school turns out was aware of the kid's passing, but had forgotten to take her out of the list. SMTH. SMTH. Shaking my translator head. I was a conversation teacher for adults in Japan who wanted to practice more natural English, not strict formal grammar, but conversational. Not quite an interpreter, but one student was an 80-year-old man, the others called Mr. Dictionary because his vocab was seriously exhaustive. There were very few words that could stump him, usually some type of slang. On the rare occasion he brought a printout to ask about a new word, I would get both excited and nervous to see what it was. This was in 2007. One day he pulls out a paper and says, I heard a news story about a scandal with an American radio host insulting some athletes. Please tell me, what does this mean? And with all eyes in the class waiting for my wise translation, he loudly and carefully pronounced, nappy-headed host. Not an actual translator, but my parents don't speak English, and I used to go with them to doctor appointments to translate. I was 14 and my mom was preggo. The NP told me to ask them when was the last time they had fun time, and then proceeded to tell me to translate fun time positions they could partake in while my mom was pregnant. I didn't want to tell my parents or translate anything, but she kept stressing that it was good for them. I don't think my parents understood me or wanted to understand what I was trying to tell them. Okay, so my parents are divorced and my dad is deaf. He's not the brightest fellow, so I sort of manage his medical stuff for him when his parents passed away. Now typically I'd book a sign language interpreter for medical appointments, so I can just take notes and ask questions, but this time I didn't bother. Figured I could just interpret. Now dad had a new girlfriend, and I had the joy of interpreting my father's struggles with erectile dysfunction. See, his new girlfriend, who was 10 years younger, was looking for more frequent performances than dad could muster. So we got in depth about how frequently was appropriate for a man in his late 50s, and then had to discuss the risks of erections going on too long with Viagra. Yeah, I always book an interpreter now, and no, I never did figure out the correct sign for erection. I really want to know how you tried to sign erection now. Sigh. I went with finger spelling Jake Paul, then signed straight and hard for how many hours was described as bad by the doctor. Signed straight and hard for how many hours was described as bad by the doctor. That's some commitment. My hands would get tired after just a couple minutes of signing. If your sign lasts for 4 hours or longer, please contact a doctor. Similar to others, not an actual translator, but my parents spoke poor English when I was younger. When I was 12 they filed for bankruptcy and took me to the lawyer's office to translate for them. Having them go through and tell me everything they blew money on was extremely uncomfortable. Now as an adult they get offended when I don't want to take financial advice from them. What were some of the more ridiculous expenses, if you don't mind me asking? Pokemon card booster packs. They had a pack-a-day habit. Having a child. I was interpreting for an elementary age deaf girl. She was having trouble understanding an issue at school and some of the other students started mocking her. I had to interpret their insults to her. I felt absolutely torn apart by that. Why did you have to interpret the insults? I've been in this exact situation before too. As an interpreter you have to interpret everything that is going on. It's my job to include the deaf student in all conversations, good or bad. If I started screening what I do and do not interpret, that takes the power away from the deaf individual. They have every right to know if someone is mocking them, same as a typical hearing kid, but it does hecking suck to interpret. I was a Spanish medical translator for a while, and there were some pretty bad ones, but one really stands out above the rest. I followed a nurse into a room where the patient was waiting. Now, I know nothing about the patient, I'm only there to translate what the nurse says. So when the nurse says you're preggers, I gave a huge smile and went, I don't speak cactus. DDDD. Patient stares in shock for a second, and then bursts into tears. The nurse stammers a bit, and then goes, "Salso. Chihuahua sombrero?" The news we had to give was bad enough, but the fact that I thought it was supposed to be a happy announcement made it 10x more cringe. 241. My husband is a coda, child of deaf adults. He used to go to the movies with his parents and sit in between them and sign for them. Yeah, the steamy car scene in Titanic is always awkward for a young child to explain to his parents. Beep 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 lettuce. Long time ago, I did a pro bono interpreting gig for a community health care clinic. The doctor asked me to help call a woman who had come in for a pap smear to tell her she had an STD. She insisted it was only a cancer test and hung up on us. We had to call her back. She didn't answer the phone. There is a service called TTY, which is used to help people who are hearing impaired have phone conversations with hearing people. Not used as much these days, because people mostly just text each other, but is still used if a company or service doesn't have an online chat option. Anyway, I used to work for a call center that provided the TTY services for my province. There used to be a couple who would call in and have phone fun time every Thursday night at a certain time. It was awesome. As a rite of passage, we used to keep it a secret and put the newbies on TTY Thursday nights when we knew the couple would be calling in. A bit of a hazing ritual, if you will. We had fun. A deaf middle schooler I was interpreting for was making the sign for Vijay and putting in front of their face and pretending to lick it. Basically saying eat kitties in ASL. They saw me looking and stopped doing it, but otherwise I would have had to voice that in front of about 100 middle schoolers because there was no one else there who could understand ASL. Close street call I've ever had. Hey guys, here comes your favorite part of the video. Do not forget to like.
Where's your other side? Oh my god!
And subscribe.